chaotic. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just looking at my I'm covering my lockdown hair currently with the hat. I definitely need a haircut. This picture is reminding me how much I need a haircut right now.
I feel like lockdown hair is a theme. I think if you go back through all the pour and sip videos from when we kicked off like just over 6 months ago, like my hair's just got longer and longer and longer and wilder and wilder.
No, I'm super excited for tonight. I mean, first themed box, awesome. We've got more themes coming up. But yeah, celebrating something really important as well in the industry, which is really great, and talking to 3 amazing and interesting guests. So it's going to be absolutely awesome.
It's going to be. And so we've talked about the theme. What is the theme? So this month we're going to be talking about women in whiskey, basically. March is International Women's Day and also Mother's Day. And I mean, I am a woman. I feel like we should be celebrated all year round. So this isn't just a token gesture. But I think while kind of like the world is watching, let's celebrate women in all of their roles across the drinks industry. Like, why not?
Absolutely. And we've got 3 amazing guests tonight. So it's amazing to see how much the industry has progressed, you know, in recent years. And let's hope we can continue to move forward and move on and progress.
Yeah, 100%. So as we said, this is our first live of the month. We've got 3 guests. We're going to kick things off with, you're going to chat to our first guest from Compass Box, right?
Absolutely. We need to get a move on today, don't we, Christy? Because it's action-packed today. So no time today from us.
Exactly. So we've got Jill from Compass Box first, and I'm going to chat to Julieann from Deanston. And then to round things off, you're going to chat with Jenna from Bulleit.
Absolutely. That sounds like a plan.
Exactly. And if you're watching, first of all, welcome. If it's your first time joining us and you've got a box that looks like this, then don't forget you've got your tasting glasses in here and your very important how to taste whiskey guide. If you're new to tasting whiskey, do not panic. We will chat you through everything. You're in very safe hands. And last but not least, you've got your tasting notes. These are very important because, well, you've got women in whiskey as a starting point, but then also you've got your tasting notes that we think about each whiskey, and there's also space on the back for your thoughts too. But even more importantly than that, make sure if you are watching along and you're tasting along, comment. We want to hear from you. Ask our guests your questions, share your tasting notes. It's honestly like the highlight of my week, hearing your tasting notes. I love it so much.
We get so many awesome tasting notes from you guys. So it's amazing reading all your tasting notes. So do get your tasting notes in, and we will try and read as many of them as possible, because this is an open community here at Pour and Sip. So it's great to kind of chat and we can kind of discuss tasting notes, because remember, no one is right, nobody is wrong. So if you think you've got something that's, it's definitely not wrong. It's what you're tasting. We all have different palates. So it's really exciting to share with so many people what we think about certain whiskies. And that's the great thing about this this club that we're all in.
100%. Like, I love the community vibe so much. Just on a practical note, if you haven't got any water with you yet, if you've got your drams but no water, grab some water now, because we're going to be rattling through these drams and you'll want a super quick palate cleanse, I reckon.
Yes, absolutely. And if you want to add water to your whiskey, please feel free to add water to it to your taste preference.
Also true. I'm going to do a few super quick shout outs before we kick off our tasting. So hi to Tom Mission and Tom Hall, looking forward to the drams. David Collette, Deanston 12-year-old. It's one of my favourite whiskies. Can't wait to try the 18. Me either. Love the 18. Owen, welcome along. First timer. Yes. Yeah. Great to have you on board.
First timers.
Yes. Oh, Sam's a first timer as well. And also Adam says good evening, and good evening to Adrian too. So yeah, pop your comments in and we will give you a shout out, and we'll try and get through as many of you and your tasting notes and your thoughts and your questions as we possibly can.
Another quick bit of housekeeping. Usually for our first timers who haven't seen us in one of these live tastings before, usually we present these from our very exciting studio in Tonbridge. But the world being as it is, we're remote, and we have been for the last few months. So we are planning to get back to the studio and are kind of all singing, all dancing production levels. But for the time being, we're remote with you guys.
Yes, we are like you. We are drammy in our living rooms. And you know what? There are worse places to be. And, you know.
I'm in my jogging bottoms right now. That's the real dream, isn't it? Working in my jogging bottoms. So.
I love it. Right, I think without any further ado, because it's, you know, somehow cracking on already, I am going to bring in our first guest, which is Jill, and I will say a very brief hi, and then I will let you crack on. So, hi Jill, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm really well. I'm so excited to drink, well, actually, I was like, to drink my whiskey, and I was like, no, actually, I'm so excited to drink all the whiskey we've got this evening. It's not every Thursday night that I'm like, I should sit down to 5 big drams, but I definitely can't think of a better way to make it feel like a real working week than a light hangover on a Friday morning. So yeah, this is perfect.
Highly ideal. I'm going to leave you guys to it, but I'm going to be dramming along, pouring and sipping myself, and we'll catch up in a bit.
Bye, Christy.
folks.
Hello. So how are you, Jill?
I am really, really good. It is not raining in the north of Scotland right now, so we are considering that like a win for the day. So yeah, really, really good.
Okay, and it's always raining here in London where I am, so you know.
Oh no!
As
Hopefully
always.
blue skies are coming, but I'm like, the best thing about rainy weather is staying in and drinking whiskey. So yeah, it's pretty much perfect.
There's a whiskey for all weather, guys, but I particularly like my whiskey when it's raining outside and I'm outside comfortable with a dram in my hand. Right, so tell us a bit about yourself, Jill, because we're celebrating women in the industry today. And tell us a bit about your journey and how you've become master blender at Compass Box, which is one of my favourites, I have to say. So I'm really honoured.
No, I love it. I know when you mentioned it earlier, I was laughing because I'm like, I love when people are like, it's my favourite. And I'm like, you don't need to say that. Like, you can feel about this. You can be like, I enjoy your whiskey and I will not be offended. That you've drunk it, that you've tried it is really big. But yes, I have a very unconventional trip into whiskey. I'm sure lots of people have come from lots of different backgrounds, but I didn't actually like whiskey when I started, not blending, but when I started in the industry. I started as a bartender at a whiskey bar in Elgin. They did like real ale and coffee and whiskey, and I didn't like any of them because I'm a tea drinker. I like a cider. I was like literally the opposite of their ideal clientele. And they were like, you have to pick one. And thank God I picked whiskey, and then all of a sudden realized that I loved it. I don't know.
Tea blender at the
Yeah,
time.
I know. Well, I do love tea, and the idea of being a tea blender, I'm sometimes like, that really works for me. Like a lot of blenders, especially like everyone knows like Johnny Walker, you've got Gordon MacPhail. A lot of their original blenders, like way back, began as tea blenders and then progressed into whiskey blending. So I feel like it would be odd to go in the opposite direction and move into tea blending, but I have a couple of friends who blend tea casually, so I'm always grateful for their rough bags when they send them to me.
Yeah, guys, I'm going to pour this dram actually first while we just have a chat. You're way ahead of me. Here's one I prepared earlier.
Fortunately, I had the full-size bottle open in a cupboard.
Can you do something for me? Because I haven't got the bottle here at the moment, and I would love to hear the bells.
I lost my bell at New Year.
Oh,
I was really pleased. So I'm like celebrating New Year 2 years ago, and the bell came off, which was a genuine tragedy. Everyone loves that bell, but in a nice way, everyone loves the bell. I sat through the development of the bottle design for 6 months. I'm actually totally cool that this bottle no longer has a bell.
For anyone who doesn't know, there's a jester on the label. One of the other things, I'm not blowing smoke here, but Compass Box have continually done the best labels in the business. Stranger and Stranger, isn't it? Who designed
we're so lucky. Our designers are exceptional.
One of the things that really makes Compass Box stand out for me, apart from the great liquid, and this featured a jester on it with the French theme, and there's a bell underneath it which is meant to be the jester's.
It hang there, and then when it rings. But for a long time, people would put it on my desk, and if they wanted a cup of tea, they'd ring it, and I'm like, you are standing up. If you want a cup of tea, you can boil that kettle. So now I hear the bells, and like my heart goes into overdrive because it's like more tea is on the way. But yeah, it's a really beautiful bottle, and I'm so sad I don't have the bell for this. But yeah, it's great.
Jared Jacker says, love Compass Box. I was only a fan of Peter's Scotch until I tried Spice Tree. So there you go. So just talk to us a bit about Compass, the briefest history possible, because it's now what, 20 odd years, the Compass Box since the.
We are 21 this year. Unfortunately, last year was our 20th anniversary, and instead of the like birthday parties that we had planned, we did some limited edition releases, but we couldn't quite celebrate it in the way that we wanted. But I am thinking, surely 22 is a new 20. And next year, we can just go all out. I literally want a birthday cake for every year we've been alive. And I want to eat my way around London having cake and whiskey. Like, that sounds so good to me. So, yeah. But we're 21 years old. We started, our founder is an American guy called John Glazer, who used to work for Johnny Walker in marketing. And he wanted to create his own blends that focused on the tradition and almost like the creativity that modern small breweries have. He wanted to take that into a blending house. He worked for Diageo. I'm so sorry, I'm going to sneeze and I'm not quite sure when, but it may happen at any moment. But he wanted to do the blends. Diageo said it's a great idea, but it's not something we're looking at the moment. But we will help you. We will be a partner to you and provide you with casks that you can buy and blend. And that's how Compass Box kind of came around originally. Our very, very first whiskey was Hedonism, which is a blended grain. She lives on the.
Love it. It's just one of my favorites.
I know. That did work. I've got like a little pile of them on the window ledge at the moment, along with the candelabra, which has been well used this year. But Hedonism is always within grabbing distance because it's just so good. So so we created Hedonism, and from there we've been offered amazing parcels of whiskey to make permanent range whiskies like Spice Tree and Peat Monster, but we get sometimes to use them for exceptional limited editions, and that's what Juveniles is. So Juveniles.
Juveniles. I always get that with the left and right.
We don't need to go. I'm so used to Zoom, which mirrors you, and so like every time I touch this side of my face, it's the wrong side of the screen, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening now. But so Juveniles was created for a tiny but amazing little bistro restaurant in Paris called Juveniles. And John happened to have dinner there one day in like 2002. Loved it so much, he left a card saying, I want to make a whiskey with you. And basically from then, they decided that that's what they were going to do. And we've produced 4 different versions of Juveniles. The goal is it's got to be light. It's got to be eminently drinkable. And that's the thing. It's got to be a whiskey you can quaff. And I hope everyone who's kind of watching, who's kind of nosing along, do not let me just ramble on. Drink this whiskey while I talk.
They are definitely tricky because I'm getting some awesome tasting notes coming in already. Everyone's gone straight in. Jeff is preparing it with a wee drop of water, lemon sherbet and pears with vanilla ice cream on the nose from Eddie. Anna Dillon, strong pear drops. Andrew Bowley, Jill loving the colour and getting lots of vanilla. Toffee apple, gorgeous on the nose. Colin Bathgate, my first Compass Box, beautiful aromas of apples and pears. Absolutely, it's a really light and airy and crisp and green kind of fruits coming from the nose on this one.
That is the absolute key for what we were looking for. So in the bistro itself, they serve this as an accompaniment to a kind of like really cold, incredibly thick rice pudding that comes with a salted caramel that you stir in. And I have only been once to this restaurant, and apparently if you go to Paris Whiskey Show, you always get to go. But I've only been to Paris Whiskey Show once, so I've only gotten to eat this literal bowl of joy once in my life, and I cannot wait to go back and have rice pudding with like the caramel sauce as well, because it's salted. When you have that beautiful sweet salty kind of flavor in your mouth, and then you take a sip of the whiskey, it really enhances that vanilla and that real fruit. I think it's got a kind of slightly red fruit note. There is a tiny amount of sherry in there, but for me, it is all about that orchard kind of freshness. Mm-hmm. I was describing one of our other whiskies the other day, and I think this really applies. It's like a ride-on lawnmower going through an orchard when like the apples and pears are landing on the ground, and it's that grass and those fruits all mulched up together. I think it's
there's definite grassy note that I'm getting from this as well. It's really
real fresh.
I'm going to go for my first sip. I knew this question was going to come for you, Jill, so I'm going to ask it before. So Sean McCarrick saying, Jill, can you tell us the ages of the whiskey in the blend and what goes into the blend? One thing that we'll know from speaking to anyone from Compass Box is you guys are super transparent with what goes into your blend. So we're really interested to hear what has gone into this dram. Of
course. Now, not all of our labels have this. Sorry, someone is blowing up my phone, so I'm just going to throw this across the room. Because I keep hearing it and looking to the wrong side from where my whiskey is, so that's somewhere in the living room now. On the back of our bottles, you're not going to be able to see this at all, I'm positive, but we actually usually have a list, which is this section here, of the different component whiskies, but obviously no one can read that. So let me blow your mind by remembering, because I studied earlier to double check I was right, exactly what's in here. So we've got some 10-year-old Strathmill. That makes up about a third of the full blend. It's in a refill hogshead, which means that Strathmill, which to me is a really fresh, green, grassy, big kind of flavour, really gets a chance to shine. I love my favourite cask type. That's a tricky one. My favourite cask type that's not a red wine cask is a refill hogshead, because I realised I must have looked like I was pausing because I was like, skip that back a little bit. I love a red wine finish, but for me, refill hogshead, they give the whiskey the chance to mature, but you still know the distillery. It's just fresh, delicious, and beautiful. So we've got that 10-year-old Strathmill. We've also got some beautiful Balmenich, also in a refill hogshead, the same quantity, I think it's 34%. So it's a third of the recipe Strathmill, a third of the recipe Balmenich. That Balmenich is 18 years old. It's big and ripe, but it's not over oaked, which is what makes this so like kind of light and playful to drink. It's just lush. It's so good. It's like juicy and white fruit. I always think it tastes like those donut peaches that come out around now. Like really, really delicious and kind of like mouth-wateringly sweet. We have, because of course, this is a Compass Box whiskey, a heap of Clynelish about to appear in here. So,
which for me, giving it its kind of waxy character that I'm getting, Clynelish, because I often get that obviously with Clynelish.
It's Clynelish to me is like those waxed apple fruits, but with the flavour of the apple coming through as well. So we've got about 20% of the Clynelish is in recharred hogsheads, which is just where you strip the inside of the barrel, re-toast it, and then fill. And then the other 10% of the Clynelish that makes up the total volume is in refill sherry butts. And it turns out I really love refill sherry butts as well. It'll never be a refill hogshead, but my God, this Clynelish, beautiful. Oh, sorry, love.
Oh, yeah, so on that note, Tarantino's asking, I'm a newbie here. May I ask what a refilled hogshead is?
Oh, of course. Let us discuss barrels. So you'll get Julieann, who you will talk to later as well, will tell you all about this, I'm sure. But get different sizes of barrel when you are like kind of filling whiskey into what we would generically call a cask. A barrel is 190 litres of spirit that you can fill into a wooden oak vessel. A hogshead holds 250 litres, and then a butt holds 500. All of these can be first fill, which is the very first time that we put whiskey in that cask. You can have virgin oak, which means that nothing has ever been in that cask before. Refill, as you would think, is usually the second or third time that we put a whiskey into the barrel. And then we get sherry butts, which have a sherry in them, which when you put whiskey into those casks, it kind of almost becomes something else. It's still very much whiskey, but the sherry in it is noticeable and everything's a blush pink. Even if you have a refill sherry butt, like second, maybe even third use, you're getting a really pale, like the palest rosé wine. You get this blush pink and it's stunning. So yeah, so they're the different cask types. They're all made from oak because in Scotch whiskey, you can only call something a whiskey if it's minimum of 3 years old and aged in oak. So all our casks are oak. They may have held things previously, but for the most part in this recipe, it's all refill and rechar whiskey. A rechar whiskey barrel of any kind, when you make a barrel originally, you toast the inside so that it is covered in char. And you want to rejuvenate the sugar after they've been taken from the first or second fill. And you use a flare, basically, which is kind of this hellish device that looks like a cat o' nine tails with loads of little spikes. And they whip it around the inside of the barrel and it strips all the inside off. You retoast it and then you begin again. So you get that rejuvenation of sugars. It's not quite as sweet as it was, but it's still really beautiful. So yeah.
And obviously the more you use a cask, the more it's been refilled. Obviously it changes. You know, absolutely changes.
Exactly.
Just a few tasting notes first before Eddie Marshall, light caramel notes, a touch of spice on the palate, vanilla ice cream all the way. Owen Wally, even, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, rice Compass Box, sheer ecstasy. Andrew Bowley, oh my God, this is fab. Going to need to save up. Ian Bullock, very herbal taste. There is an underlying herbal taste in the dram, particularly on the finish for me.
So for me, I think that herbal taste personally comes from the Glendullan component, which is about 2% of the recipe, 17 years old, in a sherry butt, and that sulphurous sherry with that beautiful fresh Glendullan just gives this kind of, it's almost like a chartreuse, but not quite. It is very herbal. It always makes me think of like cough syrup in a really good way. I realised I didn't mention the age of the Clyneliches. We've got the 17-year-old Clynelish that's in our hogshead, and we have a 15-year-old Clynelish, which is in our refill sherry butt. So that's the whole lot of it. We've got 4 different distilleries, 5 different components if we split the Clynelish into its 2 different casks. And yeah, I just love this. This was a joy to put together. I did a tasting a couple of days ago where I recounted tales of like crying in the office because I could not get a blend to work. And the day that it worked, I just wept. I was so happy. Juvenile
Eureka moment when it works and finally works after all that.
Because you're stressed and you've made 40 or 50 different versions of a blend and nothing quite works. And you're like, what is wrong with me? I thought I meant to be good at this. And then all of a sudden it does work. And it was just like, boom, tears of joy. It was so good.
You must have a lot of palate fatigue, Jill. A lot of palate fatigue when you're tasting.
But I make sure to put this, I do the training. I really stretch. I'm like, right, let's taste a lot of whiskies before we start tasting yet more. But yeah, lots and lots of weak cups of milky tea. That's the key to like, if you want to get your palate completely back to like having never tasted a flavor before, weak milky tea every like 4 or 5 whiskies will get you back there. So yeah.
Awesome. I mean, we get so many great taste notes. For me as well, one of the great things about this before we go, I mean, the mouthfeel at that initial arrival is so creamy and just wonderfully coating. So much honey and vanilla coming from that. It's really beautiful. Green tea is green. The sherry edge does give an interesting quality to the dram. Sean McCarrick finished quite short, but honey sweetness and white pepper at the end. Jonathan Williams takes me back to a fun fair, dropping my toffee apple on the grass, but licking the hell out of it.
Yeah, I like that one.
Ian Jabbo tastes quite different to what I was expecting on the nose. Bit of caramel, spicy, peppery, but still quite crisp and like a dry white wine, which obviously is with the collaboration with the wine bar in France. Jacob's Island, I really wanted to dislike this because I didn't want to think about forking out for a bottle tomorrow. This is a compliment, a great whiskey.
I love them. My absolute worst nightmare is where I do whiskey festivals where they're like, come and just join the casual blind tasting, and you get sent a set of like 10 drams, you taste them, and then at the end of it, somehow I'm like 150 quid down because I'm like, I better buy this because it's an exclusive to this. Oh, it's a nightmare. So I am with you. 100%. I know where you're coming from.
Cool. So a couple more guys before me and Jill are going to wrap up the Compass Box. Jess Williams, Adam Pound saying salted caramel finish. Sean McCarrick, thank you, Jill. I'm a big fan of Compass Box's transparency policy. So am I. Colin Barkgate, I love that you're so open about what goes into the blend. It's a great thing about Compass Box. Jacob's Island got the white wine crisp after getting to clean up the glass, actually. So, right. Wonderful stuff, Jill. It's been amazing chatting to you about this.
Yeah.
Wonderful dram, which is obvious with Compass Box. It's going out. I haven't tried this one before, to be honest.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I'm really glad then.
Okay, so I think we'll welcome back Christy now, who is going to... Christy, hello.
Hi. Oh my gosh, Jill, that was amazing. Thank you so much for talking us through the dram. I've had my nose in it. So good, so good. Grassy and fresh and spring-like.
Yeah. Perfect for this time of year.
Amazing.
Yes.
Yes. And thank you, Andy, as well. Jill and Andy as well. We'll hear from you sooner, though. Please do hang out and join us again at the very end, and we'll just all have everyone on screen at once, and we'll just geek out about whiskey for the last few minutes of the call. So if you're happy to hang around, that would be awesome.
Awesome. Cool. We'll talk to you at the end.
Speak to you in a bit. Cheers. And next up, we're going to have Julieann from Deanston, who I'm going to have a bit of a geek out about, which I really can't wait for. But Andy, that was awesome. I love the transparency piece. I feel like there's so much going on in Compass Box, so much experimentalness.
Yes, absolutely. It's one of the great things about Compass Box, and they nail it every time. So, and I'm not just saying that because Jill's here.
Of course not. No, it's true. Compass Box are amazing. And I think it's such an interesting brand to explore if you're fairly new to blended whiskey, or if you're like, oh, single malt's my thing, I don't know if I want to dabble. It's like, go and check out Compass Box.
Compass Box are the absolute kind of, I don't like blended whiskey, or blended whiskey gets a bad rep. You've not tried anything from Compass Box yet.
Fabulous. And at this point, I'm going to bring Julieann. Hey, Julieann, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. I'm just so overexcited to have so many amazing women on the call this evening. I need to calm down, honestly. To have so many guests on one live is just too brilliant. And we're going to say bye to Andy for now, but he'll be back in a bit.
Bye, everyone.
See you later. Off he goes. And now it's our turn to have a chat. So, yeah, first of all, give us a bit of a talk, a bit of a rundown, really, about who you are and how you got into whiskey, because your background is so fascinating to me, and I have questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I suppose a bit of an unconventional route in. So I studied forensics at uni, and yeah, I guess in my head that was probably watching too much CSI or something is why I decided to go down that route. But no, I mean, don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved my degree, but I took a year out, and in that year out, I worked for Chivas Brothers in their labs, and I suppose that's where my kind of passion started. From there, obviously completed my degree, and then I worked for the Scotch Whisky Research Institute for a little while, who do absolutely fantastic work with the whisky industry. They research all sorts from raw materials right through to maturation. But I guess being in the lab, it just wasn't where my passion was. I then joined Chivas again, and I worked in their grain distillery. And there, it was just so fascinating learning about the process of grain distillation. I think sometimes we focus on the malts and the malt distillation, and grain's forgotten about. It's such a complex process, and one that I really loved learning and getting to know. So yeah, from there, kind of learned about the grain, spent a bit of time in their malt distilleries, and then I moved over to Distill in 2017. And yeah, was recently promoted just at the kind of tail end of 2019 even, to master blender. So I'm in the very fortunate position that I'm the master blender for Distill. So I look after our three distilleries, so Deanston, Tobermory on the Isle of Mull, and Bunnahabhain over on Islay. And obviously we've got our blends as well. We've got Scottish Leader and Black Bottle. So yeah, I absolutely love my job. Fantastic, working the most amazing whiskies.
Yes. Oh my gosh, there's so much to unpack. I'm going to start off with the science thing, because this is just really fascinating to me. Like you say, I think NCIS, all of these like crime things, it's like when I get into a lab and solve all these mysteries. How do you think that sort of set you up for a career in whiskey? Because I sometimes think when you're nosing whiskey, you're kind of like unpicking what's gone on in its past, like how it's been matured, how it's been distilled, all of this.
Yeah, so I think the kind of methodical and logical approach to things, I really brought that. So obviously when you're putting blends together, you do need to be quite kind of logical, methodical, accurate in what you're doing. But at the same time, it was about having that kind of creative flair. And I think that's where the two of them kind of met. So yeah, I definitely did learn quite a few transferable skills from university and brought them across. But I guess I've just had to kind of adapt my ways of working to be that little bit more creative.
Yeah. Did you always know that you had like an amazing nose and palate? Because this is the thing, I feel like there are so many routes into the whiskey industry that many people just don't know. But I think fundamentally, like you must have, yeah, just an incredible nose to be able to create these incredible whiskies.
No, absolutely not. So I just wasn't a fan of whiskey at all, I'll be honest. I think sometimes when you're starting to drink alcohol, you kind of follow in maybe your parents' footsteps. So I always saw my mum drinking wine, so naturally it was kind of wine that I started drinking. And because of that, whiskey just wasn't something that was kind of on my radar. And then when I started with Chivas on my placement year, they have an excellent sensory panel, and that's kind of where I started learning about nosing, learning about tasting, and it was there that I realised I did actually have a good nose and quite good kind of sensory skills. And I thought, if I get an opportunity to develop that, then it's definitely something that I need to explore. And like I say, just through the Scotch Whisky Research Institute and being back at Chivas, I was on the sensory panels at both, and then obviously joining Distill, I've just really kind of developed those kind of organoleptic skills and all the sensory stuff. So yeah, I've been fortunate.
I absolutely absolutely love it. Oh my gosh. So before we get stuck into the Deanston, because we've got the 18-year-old here, which is, yeah, I'm so excited to get stuck into it. Give us a bit of a lowdown about all 3 distilleries that you look after, because they're all so different.
Yeah, they're completely different distilleries. Start on Tobermory because it's maybe just the easiest. So Tobermory is one of the kind of oldest commercial distilleries in Scotland. Bit of a kind of checkered past. So it's been opened, it's been closed. And I think at one point a lot of people thought that it wouldn't reopen, but with kind of hard work, determination, and creativity, we opened Tobermory again. And yeah, beautiful little distillery. Always makes me laugh because it's a distillery that I say you must go and visit. It's in such a beautiful location. For anybody who's not been to Mull, it sits kind of right next to where all the beautiful coloured houses are. And you can see that that's kind of reflected in our whiskies. It's a very expressive brand. And as I said, it's a distillery that you must go and visit. But it's got to be one of the worst distillery tours. And it's not because our tour guides are terrible, because they're fantastic. But you're standing at the start of the tour and you can see the end because it's so tiny. So you're standing where the malt comes in and you can already see the stills. So yeah, it's funny, but Tobermory is an absolutely wonderful distillery. And then obviously we've got Bunnahabhain over on Islay, which has the most beautiful setting. So Bunnahabhain means mouth of the river, and that kind of refers to the River Margadale, right where Bunnahabhain sits. So as I said, absolutely beautiful setting. And what's quite unique about Bunnahabhain is that we are predominantly unpeated. So we do produce a peated spirit at Bunnahabhain, but most of what we do is our unpeated spirit, which is quite unique for Islay. So we take our water from fresh spring water and we pipe it into the distillery just so that it's not getting any peat influence. Obviously the malt's completely unpeated, and yeah, just I feel like that's how we stand out. And we have beautiful warehouses over in Islay as well, where we mature a lot of our Bunnahabhain, so we always get that wonderful coastal influence when we're nosing and tasting Bunnahabhain. So as I said, wonderful distillery and a beautiful whiskey. And then yeah, I suppose that takes us on to the Deanston. So Deanston, the story begins a way back in kind of 1785 when it opened as a cotton mill. The mill was right at the very heart of the community. It provided employment to around about 1,500 people. The workforce grew and it became a kind of self-contained village. So there was grocery stores, there was a school, they even had their own currency. And
currency, that's so
yeah, so they had their own currency. It was basically French and Spanish coins, and they stamped them, and they were known as Deanstons, and that's what they used to kind of trade in that little village of Deanston. So yeah, proper heart of the community, and I think that Deanston is so big on community and still being the heart of the community, and that's why we do so many kind of projects to try and give back. But yeah, so going from the cotton mill, just with changing times, it meant that the cotton mill had to close. But in 1965, the mill found new life, and it became the home of Deanston. So it sits right in the banks of the River Teith again. Beautiful setting. And the River Teith, so it's the second fastest flowing river in Scotland, which is absolutely perfect for us because we're powered by sustainable energy, and it's thanks to obviously the kind of the water and how quickly it flows. And not only that, the water flows over granite, so it's beautifully soft and it's absolutely perfect for processing. So yeah, that kind of takes us into the start of Deanston, I suppose. So the water.
I can't resist. It smells so good.
Oh, yeah, of course. Have a nose as I'm going through the kind of details. So as I said, yeah, the water comes in from the River Teith. The grain that we use, it's all local, Scottish grown. We don't bring anything else in from England or anywhere else for Deanston. It's all Scottish barley that we use, which is quite nice. We have a beautiful open top mash tun. I think it's 11 tons. Our mash tun, and it was actually recently replaced, but we replaced it like for like. So although it's a new mash tun, looking at it, it still looks kind of old, because we just wanted to keep it true to its heritage. And then obviously from the mash tun, go through to our washbacks. We've got 8 stainless steel washbacks, and they're around about 60,000 litres each. And then we have a range of long and short fermentations. So the guys at the distillery just now, they only work 5 days. But as our master distiller used to say, you can't tell yeast to clock off at 5 o'clock on a Friday. So that yeast obviously continues to work over the weekend. And that just means that we have our longs and our shorts. So our shorts, we get the kind of the spicy, the nutty notes coming through, and then as the distillation, the fermentations get that little bit longer, we get the beautiful kind of freshly cut grass and hay coming through, and then right through to our longest fermentations, which give us the beautiful kind of crisp apple notes and stuff that really start to come through in Deanston. And then obviously again, a lot of those flavours are produced on the stills. So the stills at Deanston, really big stills, about 25,000 litres for the wash stills and just over 16,000 litres for our spirit stills, but quite a kind of narrow neck. But the lye pipe has an incline in it, which is quite unique. And just because that lye pipe's got an incline, it means that we get an awful lot of reflux. So essentially the kind of spirit's boiling up, but it just can't get quite over. So it obviously comes all the way back down. It has to boil again. And that's what gives us the kind of beautiful, light, fruity flavours that we see in Deanston, and that wonderful waxy character as well. And then from there, obviously into cask. Majority of our Deanston will typically go into bourbon casks or whisky refill. As Jill said, whisky refill casks are underrated. They're absolutely fantastic. So into that, and then we store them in our warehouses at Deanston. So what's quite unique about our warehouse at Deanston, it was the old weaving shed. So when they used to weave cotton, it had to be really kind of temperature controlled. So it's got big kind of vaulted ceilings, and there was grass on the roof. And it turns out that where you weave cotton's the perfect environment for maturing whiskey. So we get a really even maturation, which, yeah, absolutely perfect for maturing our wonderful whiskies and our wonderful Deanston 18.
Definitely. Oh my gosh, we've got so many great tasting notes coming in. I'm going to share some now, and I've got a few more questions for you as well, but we haven't even had a taste yet. Okay, I'm going to run through the nose. So Jacob says, I work in a bakery and can confirm apple and rhubarb pies are exactly this nose. Michael's talking about buttery pastry, tropical fruit, creamy rich porridge and vanilla. Adam says, I can smell the bourbon casks, really earthy when first opened, slightly opening up after a bit of breathing, can get the tropical fruit. Jane, oh my gosh, I love the sound of this. Buttered crumpets with bananas. Yes, please. Keith, it reminds me of the Walker Shortbread Factory, but I mean in a really good way. Yes, please, again. Andrew's getting leather and butter. Sean's talking about cream, fudge, orange and spice on the palate. Jim's saying beautiful oily mouth coating. He's jumped ahead. I'm fine, go for it. Yeah, your drams, guys. Fantastic stuff. And Eddie's saying salted caramel sauce with a touch of spice. So I'm going to tuck in and have a little taste. Talk us through the palate.
Yeah, so what's lovely about Deanston and about all of our kind of core range is that we keep our strength that little bit higher. So we sit at 46.3% ABV, and all of our whiskies are unchill filtered. So obviously, as you mentioned there, that beautiful mouth coating, and that is what I think is beautiful about this. So just a brief background on what this went into. So this was in whisky refill casks for 16 years, and as Jill said, the beauty of a whisky refill cask is that it still gives the whisky plenty, it still matures it beautifully, but you never ever mask the wonderful notes of that distillery. So we've still got the beautiful Deanston notes in there, and then we just finish it for 2 years in a bourbon cask just to round it off, give it a little bit of depth and complexity, and make it that little bit sweeter. So yeah, the mouthfeel is obviously a massive one in there, but on the palate, it's a bit, for me, it's the perfect balance of being sweet and spicy. It's got the lovely kind of vanilla notes coming through from the bourbon, gingerbread coming through, hints of honey in there. Absolutely beautiful. For me, honey is so typical of Deanston. But we've still got the beautiful kind of crisp apple notes as well coming through.
Absolutely. I'm getting like honey, cinnamon, that crispness. It's just really gorgeous. We've had some really fascinating questions through for you as well. So Hannah's asked if you've got any recommended resources on developing your nose, any books, for example.
Oh, that's actually a really great question. Do you know, not in terms of books, but what I would do is that I'm sure you can download, or if you got in touch with the Scotch Whisky Research Institute, they would give you their flavour wheel. And the flavour wheel that they've developed is absolutely fantastic, and it really breaks down basically a lot of the aromas that you associate with whisky into different groups, whether it's green grassy, and then it will break that down further. Maybe some things that you might associate as an off note, so your sulphury notes, and it will describe how you might get that as either sweet corn or kind of stewed veg. And what I would really recommend is just really use your nose and use the flavour wheel. And I think if you use the flavour, sometimes what happens when you're nosing something is that you can't quite put your finger on what it is that you're getting. But if you've got that flavour wheel in front of you, it really kind of prompts something in your head to say, do you know what? Yeah, that actually is honey or crisp apple or whatever it may be. So definitely the Scotch whisky flavour wheel is absolutely perfect for trying to develop your nose and just the words that you use to describe these things.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think obviously I'm not a master blender, but in terms of like tasting, I think the more you can taste and the more practice you have of putting language to flavour and aroma, you're just away at that point. That's what it is. And then we've had a similar question from Nigel, which again is super fascinating. He wants to know like how much is learned and how much is natural ability when it comes to sort of nosing and tasting.
So yeah, I think that's quite a difficult question to answer. So I think you do need to have that natural ability there, but it definitely can be developed. So what I do with the sensory team that we have on site is we give them an organoleptic test where they smell basically sensory pots, and they need to match what they're, so it will be a coded number and they need to match it to the description. And we start off at a high concentration and then we work our way down till we get to a really low concentration. And part of it is about building confidence. If it's not something that you're doing every day, then and you're not very familiar with it, a lot of it is about confidence. And once you build your confidence, it's amazing how much your nose and your palate really come on. So you definitely can train it. There's some people that just unfortunately it's not something that they're going to be great at. But you definitely can really help somebody grow and develop in sensory stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And ultimately, even if you think, oh, I'm really struggling to pick out different things, like as long as you're enjoying your whiskey, right? Unless it's your job to be like a master blender or you're in a lab or you're, doing these things, just enjoy your whiskey. I think sometimes we can get too caught up on these things on occasions.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think yourself and Andy touched on it at the start when you were encouraging people to send in their tasting notes. Like, there is absolutely no right or wrong answer. What I get isn't going to be what somebody else gets. And that's absolutely fine. And it fascinates me to hear people's tasting notes and what they get. And that's the thing, like, people are so kind of impressionable. And I think sometimes they maybe feel a little bit under pressure to get the right answer. And it's not like that. And we laugh about it because we could be nosing a ram, and my colleagues, the distillery managers that I work with, as soon as you say something to them like foam banana, they're nodding along and, oh yeah, I get that. And you're just making stuff up, and they nod along and they say that they've got it. And it's, I'm personally not getting it, but no matter what I say, they nod and they say that they've got it. And that's not what it's about. It's about getting whatever you get is absolutely fine. Like we say, no right or wrong answer at all.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just going to round off with some more tasting notes and then we'll bring Andy back because I don't know how time is flying. I'm having such a great time. Where is the evening going? So Sean McCarrick says, nice warm finish, slightly drying and peppery. David says, nose, baked goods for sure, tropical fruit. Adrian says, lovely whiskey. Enough said. Sorry, not very sophisticated. Does not need to be. Green tea is green. I like the Deanston. The aftertaste has a nice spicy finish and there is a spice fruit tang to the main palate. Totally agree. Really lovely. Like this one from Jonathan Williams. So much going on here. Sweetness, ginger, orange, honey, citrus, vanilla. This is epic. And then Mike, oh, this is a subtle drink. It's like a ginger butter biscuit. The flavours really come through in the finish. And then just one more comment before I bring Andy back. And I love this. This is from Andrew Bowley. So before we bring Andy back, we'll speak to Andrew. My daughter bought me my subscription for Christmas. This is inspiring tonight for her. Thanks for introducing us to women in the whiskey industry, which I love. This is so great. And this is what this is all about, showing that, anyone has a place in whiskey, right? If you love it, if you've got the talent, the drive, then go and succeed in whiskey and it's awesome.
Absolutely, no, for sure.
Just amazing. I'm going to bring Andy back. Oh, hi there. How are you doing?
Oh, hi. I absolutely love it. I'm a huge fan of Deanston anyway. I know I'm saying this now to everyone, and I'm going to say that as a guest on this show. But no, I do love Deanston. I love the kind of the green philosophy there. The organic releases have been amazing. I tried an organic PX release recently, which was just mind-blowing. But the 18 is it's a beautiful, beautiful dram. Lovely bourbon finish, wonderful, creamy, fudgy kinds of, it's just lovely.
Yeah, it's just something. And thank you so much, Julieann. It's been such a joy having a chat and getting into like the depths of like sensory, all of these things, but also the 18-year-old itself. So such a treat. Again, please hang around if you can, and we'll have a chat again at the end.
Of course, thank you for having me.
See you again in a minute. Oh my gosh, I'm having the best time. I actually can't quite believe time is flying as it is.
It's flying by. It is flying by.
And we have the last of our superstars to chat through this evening is Jenna. I'm loving all the J names, by the way. This is also excellent. I'm just going to bring her in now, all the way from Amsterdam. I feel like it's provision. Come in, Amsterdam.
Yeah, hey. How are you, Andy? How are you? Oh, it's been amazing to hear all these flavor notes and everybody in the chat exploding. I'm really, really keen. So definitely getting into the compass box.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Awesome.
Amazing. And I can't wait to hear more about the Bulleit, but I'm going to pour myself a dram and kick back and tune in and leave you in Andy's capable hands and tasting glass, I guess.
Bye again.
See you in a bit.
I've already poured my dram, Jenna. So let us. Exactly. Well ahead of you all. So Jenna, talk to us a bit. You're based in Amsterdam at the moment. Just talk to us a bit about kind of how you got to your position and your brand ambassador for Bulleit and many other companies. So talk to us a bit about your journey.
So I kind of always liked whiskey. You know, when you're about, I don't know, in uni and you decide what things you like or not. I just kind of like Johnny Walker Black and James and I think with soda. They was almost like my party drink, my dinner drink, it's just simple, easy and handling. But it wasn't really intentional. I was just working in bars after that. And then slightly just discovering like, oh, I quite like rye and I quite like spicy finish. And actually at some point I was like, oh, Abunda is one of the things that I appreciate. But it all kind of changed with Kaolila. At some point, a certain chap calling Dan, I'm still remembering, it's 11 years ago when we're having a whiskey tasting and was like, you must try this. And like some of my colleagues from the bar were like, well, not everybody likes it, you know, island whiskey, it's going to be like, and it touched straight away my favorite palate. I was like, this is totally amazing.
You're like me. My gateway dram was Lefroy 10. And like, it's just, usually people are like, oh my God, that's horrible. I need something a bit sweeter. You like me, like a nice peated, huge peat whiskey. I'm like, I love this stuff.
Yeah, and that's kind of, it became almost of a journey. I was like, okay, there is this place called Isle, I must go. And they're like, oh, they even do jazz festivals, whereas I must go twice in a year then. Oh, and there's a whiskey festival. And gradually just kind of ended up having more conversations, discovering more drums. Just, it's not like there was a journey, but in the same time, unconsciously it was, because part of me said, well, I'd like to be able to do to a certain extent what Colin has done for me to other people. To just like give you a taste, an idea, something in the glass, and that makes you be like, wow, I did not imagine this. This changes things.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And then, bars and events and cocktails. So it was kind of about, first, I do really like corn. Like, I love cornbread with like some cream cheese. I even make like milkshakes with corn milk. I do like polenta with like pecorino cheese. It's just, I'm not surprised though in a way. What I taste and I drink a lot about is on the base of corn. But at the same time, I love rye bread. So it's like, yeah.
So we're getting Bulleit being the perfect drink for you now.
No, we're talking about bread. And then you put some salmon and you put some pickles, but then we're getting into picklebacks. So it was kind of a journey through how do you discover flavorful cocktails and what spirits can bring you. And then through world class and cocktail competitions and like meeting people, at some point there came like, hey, would you like to talk more whiskey? And I was like, well, yes, especially because I would have got to work with the person who introduced me to that Kaolila with Colin Dunn. So I was like, that's fabulous. I need that in my life. Plus there's 28 other distilleries that they had. and some I don't know, it's like the flora and fauna collection, and there's Scotch, and there's bourbon, and it's such a variety, and like Irish whiskey. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna get to meet more people that do incredible things and like develop my palate and taste. So it was like impossible not to say yes, I'm coming.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like an awesome, interesting journey. It's interesting because the other two girls didn't like whiskey before they became into the industry, and you already liked whiskey with the Kalila journey. So
yeah, I don't know how it happened. I've just never been that gin girl.
yeah, no, I'm not the gin boy either. So talk to us a bit about Bulleit as a brand, a little bit about the history of Bulleit and kind of where it started, because it's kind of a cool story, kind of backstory of how it's kind of got to where it is.
Yeah, so the brand in itself, as it is, it's like actually just a little bit younger than myself. It's 34 years. But Tom Bulleit, when he created it, he got really inspired by his great-grandfather recipe. I never know how many grand-grandfathers to put in there, and I was like, how much is a generational gap? But it was in the 1800s, this chap, Augustus, who, like, as the story goes, he was like classy immigration story, French dude. They had some knowledge of like distilling, gets into America, gets into like corn, develops a recipe. At some point, he disappears. Now, it was the 1800s. What do you think would have happened? Like, people could be like kidnapped. People might have like a bit too much fun with their own supply and like fell off a flatboat, or might just move to another frontier city with another family. Everything was happening back then. And that's always like kind of up and fun for debate. But what's fun is that what stays, you know, it's almost like when legends die, spirits are born.
Mm-hmm.
And so he resurrected this family recipe, like a high rye bourbon, and went with it. And he, like, great entrepreneurial dude from the perspective how he kind of shifted. He was made by Seagrams, then he ended up within the Diageo portfolio. The brand grew and evolved and like developed more, because he started with like the flagship bourbon. Mm-hmm. And then about 2007, it came the rye, which is actually kind of this is the route who really got me into Bulleit, because it's just perfect for like American whiskey, classic cocktails. So then you're like, oh, I'm liking on Manhattan, and I'm
Bulleit, right? It's just just before we go to the mash bill. So one of the most important things about Bulleit and what makes it so different is, you know, it has got quite a high rye percentage within its mash bill. So Sean McCarrick said, Jenna, can you tell us a bit about the mash bill for this? So this is, unless I'm mistaken, it's exactly the same as the standard Bulleit mash bill.
Yeah, so it's the same juice. What we taste, if we were to taste them next to each other, we taste thyme in wood, and thyme in like fresh wood that brings so much more flavor. American white oak, and by regulation, because like within bourbon there's so much similarity, and yet people manage to craft so much flavor that's different. But because it's a minimum of 10 years, that's on the bottle. That's the youngest period in there. It's all American oak. It gets all of this woodiness, so it's quite interesting. Even what we're gonna get on the palate of layer, I'm like, yes, on the nose, we definitely feel that there's oak in there, and it's oak, and it's bold, and it's like proud in the same. But what I like, especially about like groups like yours, is that there's always the curiosity. Like, we're not just gonna stop at the first thing we notice. We're taking that curtain and we try to like break down and get our nose again and see what else can we grasp in there. It's like,
absolutely. I mean, for me, the first thing that jumps out is it's quite a woody note on the nose. There's quite a lot of wood spice on the nose, and I wonder, is that coming from the extra time in cask in comparison to the normal Bulleit bourbon?
Yes, it does. And like the casks that tend to be like the barrels that tend to be selected are some of the ones that the way they're positioned. Because like our warehouses, they're really left to the elements of nature, and the temperature and difference and the pressure and everything kind of changes with the time. So according to where a barrel is going to be in the warehouse, it's going to have quite different flavor profile. So those that end up into the 10 are quite unique from that perspective. And they're like, for me, do you know when you're like camping and you have this wood fire and you're trying to like, it's been a bit humid during the night and you're prepping in the morning for the tea and you put your like wood chips to warm up? That kind of soaked wood, which in the same time, when I'm in Scotland and I go to cooperages and you get some fresh wood that traveled, you still can smell some of that bold oak. It's got like this baking spices, but in the same time, it's got like this wet, strong note, which I absolutely like.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely getting it. I'm just getting some, because everyone's already jumped ahead of us with the tasting notes. Carlo loved the dry, woody, rice, spicy nose on this. Bulleit makes the best Manhattans too, which we previously said. Yeah, so the mash bill for this, talk us through the mash bill for this.
So yeah, the mash bill, kind of same as you'd make like multi-grain bread to get back to the intro. What we've got, like by law, it has to be 51% corn. Ours is like 28 rye, which makes it like high rye. What you have in bourbon, you could have like wheat, you could have like, gosh, people like the Pinot nowadays and oats and everything. But we have a high rye percentage. That's what we get on the nose, all of that spicy notes, but in the same time, like a bit of like greenery.
Yeah, so is it 28% rye in the mash bill, which is quite high for a bourbon to have 28% rye. Okay, so then
barley.
Yeah. Okay.
And the rest is the base, corn.
Cool. Yeah, exactly. Which is giving the sweetness, but we're getting that kind of spiciness as well from the rye. This for me, I'm getting notes of like rye bread and stuff like that on the nose for me. Again, spicy note, fresh mowed grass, Anadilla nose of truffle, toffee, and banana. Graham Hughes on the nose. I get banana and freshly shaven wood at local sawmill. Mark Boston smells like my kids' pancakes with treacle. I need to come over and taste their pancakes because that sounds amazing. And just quickly, Mike Pizarro. I've actually had Bulleit before. It's one of my preferred cocktail whiskies. Looking forward to this a lot. Sean McCarrick, lots of oak in the mouth, vanilla and cinnamon spices. We haven't tried it, Jenna, so she'll before. So cheers, everybody.
Cheers. No, you get the high rye and you get the dry, and
dry. Really spicy, dark. It's like really dark fruits, dark cherry, dark kind of vanilla, and dark butterscotch.
All the apricots, like stoned fruits in there. And I mean, I get vanilla, but I almost get vanilla ice cream. But disclaimer, I love ice cream. My brain's always gonna go to vanilla ice cream. I'm never gonna say, oh, I capture marzipan, because I don't really consume a lot of marzipan, so it never goes there. But yeah.
And the beautiful rice spice that's on there, and it's really kind of spicy from the wood spice, maybe from that extra aging in the casks.
But do you want to give it another nose now and see how some of that oak almost like gets into a coconutty flavor that it opens up, at least like for me, and it's still like salted milk coconutty somewhere in there.
Absolutely, the notes of like salted caramel as well. Absolutely. Salted caramel ice cream as well. I don't know if you only like vanilla ice cream.
Oh, I mean, Mackey's is like after Scotch, my favorite thing coming after Scotland. And yeah, I mean, you just make a milkshake with that, but actually toast bread like cocoa milk in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. BNTR saying pure alcohol smell, but so he's expecting a punch, but it's smooth and almost cognac-y. Actually, this is at 45.6%. Now, the normal Bulleit, is that at what percent? Is that
45? So it's quite funny, like, because in Kentucky, what happened within time, like the Angels don't only have whiskey; they have a bit of water every now and again. So within time, actually, the ABV grows.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being in Kentucky,
what we're doing is like this is the product of the fine art of blending. But it does change it there.
Cool.
And I want to get some eucalyptus forest.
Oh, eucalyptus forest. Okay, that's a great
I do like forest, so my brain as well goes like into ice creams and into forest, one way or another.
Michael Smith, buttery, rich, smooth baking spices like jam. It's delicious, bottle ordered. Adrian Bird, your three guests tonight are intensely knowledgeable, fascinating. Thank you so much. You're welcome, Adrian. Actually, all three of you guys have been absolutely awesome to have on the show. Sarah, smells like a freshly painted room. Not the type that gives you a headache, though. Smells a bit waxy, too, like a barber jacket. Okay, if you've ever had a barber jacket. Tom Hall, Arrival seems much softer than the standard bottling. What's the driver behind that? Now, that's interesting that you're thinking that. I mean, obviously, with the age, it's kind of softened those edges that you get with the kind of youthful whiskey.
Yeah, it takes time to spend together, so then it becomes a bit more like one and like something. But in the same time, it does have like, for me, what I like within the finish is that it gets on this balance in between fruit and dry, and it kind of dances in there. And I like that people talked about banana, because I'm always like, at some point within the spike, you're like, oh, this is the banana now moment. And you kind of feel it there.
Absolutely. Mike Pizarro said, yeah, rye and banana and dried fruits like dates and figs. Absolutely. These are awesome tasting notes, guys. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a really wonderful bourbon, this. I mean, I have to say. And for me, it's in comparison to the standard Bulleit, I think that extra time in cask has given it kind of a darker, kind of much richer, fruitier element, as well as a kind of spicier wood kind of note for me.
An old fashioned for that, Andy. Like if you ever have some extra Guinness sitting at home, just like add some sugar, simmer your Guinness down in a pot. Maybe you can add a dash of like cacao or like some bitters, and then you just mix it with the Bulleit 10 years old, and you are so sorry. That's like kind of my batch secret for when people used to come over for drinks, and then I didn't want to make too much work, because I was like, no, the shaker stays behind, everything's pre-ready, there's going to be old-fashioned, ice is there, I'm just going to play music, guys.
That sounds absolutely amazing. I'm going to have to get that recipe off of you probably, so I can remember. What cocktail would you pair this with? Would it be an old-fashioned for you, or would you?
Yeah, I think it shines in old-fashioned, being like at this 45.8, but it's just because like the wood comes forward, and then as it opens up, and as it stays longer, like as the ice melts, because you're not going to have like the fanciest 5-star hotel ice all the time at home. It just really keeps that boldness and those robust flavors. And it's the spiciness ultimately that just gives it this kick that keeps on going.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a couple more tasting notes before we get everybody back in the room to discuss. Your Uncle Vanya finish makes me think of autumn leaves, earthy and rich. Graham Hughes palate, spicy dried fruits and apricots, as Jenna was saying, but get a woody finish, little bit of smokiness, definitely a bottle to be sorted on payday. And Jared Jaggers, I don't love standard Bulleit because I get sour in it. But this 10-year-old is much more enjoyable with nice caramel, dried fruit and oak. And Mike Pizarro, water adds a lot of earthiness to it in a really good way. So yeah, I think everyone's getting some really good notes. I think we should invite Christy and all the others back into the room so we can kind of all discuss this beautiful dram. Oh, Christy, you're on mute.
I knew this would happen. This always happens.
2021. It's the saying of 2020 and 2021. You're on mute.
Literally rinse repeat. So I'm going to bring in Jill and Julieann again. Hi team, how are we doing? We've got all 5 of us on screen. This is too much fun.
Hey.
Jenna, can I just say, your Guinness recipe, my mind is blown that this can be a thing, like to like reduce down Guinness, add in the maybe bitters and chocolate, and then make a cocktail with it. I'm just like, this needs to happen in my life.
I need that recipe. That recipe I need properly so I can remember it.
Yeah, I'll share it. It's a good one. And I mean, like, I love Guinness. So it's nice to like find ways to incorporate it into my life.
Okay.
No, this is amazing. Oh my goodness, it's been so great to hear from all of you. I'm just wondering, while we're having a quick chat for the last 5 minutes or so, if you're watching, let us know your dram of the night, which I know is going to be so difficult because they're all so great. I actually can't choose, so I feel really mean kind of setting that challenge to everyone watching because they're all so different. I just kind of interesting question about rye whiskey, because I think we're seeing a bit of a rye resurgence in the UK for sure. Why do we think people are so fascinated by that grain? I guess obviously Bulleit's a high rye bourbon, but we're seeing it on cocktail menus. We're seeing people be really into it. Like, what's going on? What's the fascination with the grain?
I mean, rye was actually bigger in the States than bourbon in the whole beginning of it, and there were like quite a variety of it. But I think what we find in general is we all want a bit more kick and more flavor, and it's almost like the same journey that happens from like vodka into Amaros, let's say. It's kind of the more you discover, you like, okay, it's actually, and I do like gentle flavors as well, but sometimes you want to like get more and more and get more praline and get more spicy. And when we're looking even like at the love everybody has for mezcal, it's just this captivation into how much more flavor can we envelop within. I mean, people like you guys, like Deanston, like how much flavor can these people blend and distill into a product and actually make it shine? So not surprised that rye, and there's like rye vodkas and rye distillates and rye English whiskies, because the grain in itself, and that's why I had the analogy with bread, just has so much power. It's such a bold, flavorful grain. And then it packs this lemony spiciness and almost like jalapeno elements into that. So yeah, I think it's delicious.
Yeah, I love the texture of it too. It really kind of like breaks it up a bit. Jill, what's your kind of favorite like flavor push in whiskey at the moment? Is it different grains? Is it different cask finishes? Like, what's it for you?
To be honest, I know I was saying earlier, like refill hogsheads are my cask of choice, and I'm going to blow a little smoke towards Julieann here and say the Deanston Bordeaux cask. Oh my God, I love a red wine cask. I also love a port cask. So basically, Edredauer, Deanston, well, any Portwood, anything with that big, rich, red fruit flavour. I'm like, it's amazing. I've got a bottle right next to me of the Deanston Madeira cask, which I love, 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 which was given to me by like an uber Julieann fan. They're like, have you tried it? And I was like, no. And they're like, just take it. And that is probably the biggest perk of a job that I've ever been given. Is someone going, you must try this. But for me, I love red wine. I love that flavour in cask, but I love smoke and red wine. So I'm all about like sherried Kalilas, red wine kind of Deanstons, all that kind of thing. They just everything. Because to me, I know Deanston's really fresh, but it's got that boldness that it stands up to a different finish. And I love it. I think it's beautiful. So yeah, all about the red. If it's red, I'll be drinking it.
Amazing. I love it. What about you, Julieann? What are your like flavor excitement situations right now?
So yeah, I definitely agree with Jill on the kind of red stuff. Obviously, Bunnahabhain we typically do in kind of sherries and stuff, and it works so well. But as Jill said, Deanston is so adaptable and it lends itself so well to so many different casks. And obviously, not to give anything away, but we've started laying Deanston down in some really expressive casks and stuff that's really, really different. So yeah, I'm currently in the process of kind of tasting them just to see how it's maturing and what it's taken on. And I'm finding that really, really exciting, using stuff that's that little bit more kind of outside the box rather than your traditional maybe sherries or ports or things like that. So yeah, for me, all about the cask finishes, and the more unique, the better.
Amazing. And anyone watching will be super interested to know that I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but the Rioja cask Lechig that we had a couple of boxes ago, that's from Tobermory Distillery. So do you have a hand in creating that? Just a little fun fact there.
Lechig absolutely nail it with the cask finishing for me. The wine cask finishing. I've just tried some absolutely amazing ones. And that Rioja cask we tried recently, Christy, on this show was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
I Googled that to check and find out if I can get a bottle later, because I'm just like, that is everything I'm looking for in a whiskey.
Oh, honestly, and the colour of it is just absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, you've had a bottle, you'll have seen it. The colour, the flavour, the depth, it's just absolutely fantastic. And I'm hoping it kind of knocks down a few barriers of the whole snobbery against non-age statements, because as a whiskey, it's just phenomenal.
What I love is we actually use some Deanston, and we used to use Lechig in quite a lot of our blends. And one of our really heavy sherry blends has Deanston, and it's so noticeable in it. And you're just like, oh God, yes. So I love it. It is, and I love Bulleit. Like the baby bourbon was one of my favorite things when I first started drinking like kind of bourbon flavors. I was just like, it just tastes like chewing the thickest like block of butter. It's so good. And your little shout out to Mackie's ice cream really touched my heart, because it is the best ice cream in the world. Like, I don't care where you are, gelato is great, but Mackie's traditional ice cream. Yeah.
I'm not sure the Italians are going to be happy with that comment.
Gelato is great, but we're in a different category. This is Scottish and Italian. We can keep them separate, but yeah, no, it's beautiful.
Yeah, we have got. Are you going to say about the votes coming in for the drink of the night? I don't even know where to start. There are so many comments.
We could talk all night about this kind of stuff with you guys. There's been so much to talk about, but there's so many votes from you, Joe. Deanston getting a lot of love. Crane Jones, definitely Deanston. Wide Eye Bill Deanston for me. Carlo, lovely Dranswood for me. The Compass Box is another level. Incredible whiskey could be the one to get my wine-loving missus into the whiskey. Eddie Marshall, my other half has gone for the juvenile. Green tea is green. I agree. Bulleit is the top for me too. They're not too much to choose between. Compass and Deanston would happily drink them all. Tom Hall, also great, but the juveniles takes it for me. You guys are all sitting there going, his name, but no, I know you're.
Do you know what? I think I've lost it now, but my uncle Vanya said I actually refuse to choose between them. There's quite a lot of these kind of a vibe going on, which, I mean, it's great. We've had 3 amazing whiskies. I feel absolutely spoiled for a Thursday night.
Absolutely. Gavin Ellis and the Rioja one was awesome, talking about the Lechig already ordered and finished. Jonathan Williams adored the Lechig Sinclair. The colour was immense. It's like a rosé wine, honestly, that colour. It's absolutely mad. Eddie Marshall, the Lechig Rioja cast finish is amazing. It's hands down the best value whiskey currently on the market, in my opinion. And lastly, Hannah Street, this has been so amazing. Thanks so much to everyone for sharing. Jeff, they've all been stunning tonight. I've always loved Compass Box, very innovative. Yeah, we're just getting so many amazing comments for tonight's show.
Yeah, so many. I love it. And everyone's saying thank you for the great chat as well. Jeff, they've all been stunning. Jim Smith, all 3 very good, although different, just can't decide. And honestly, just to all 3 of you, to Jenna, to Jill, and to Julieann, I love the alliteration. But I love
all the J's.
Yeah, all the J's. But yeah, 3 incredible women from like different areas of the industry, different brands. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
I know it's been really great.
Yeah, so much fun. So just to round off, I guess, guys, we're going to be back on the 18th for the second half of the box. So we've got Scallywag and Rowan Co, which will be fabulous. We've got Cara from Douglas Lane and then Laura, who's a distiller at Rowan Co, coming to have a chat. So if you can, save some of the drams for that. If you've loved the bottles this evening, then the member store's got discounts on them all. So we've got bargains for you. And I think we've taken some money off some of the boxes from last year too. So if you're like, oh, I love that dram, you can get a repeat box as well. So go check that out. But yeah, thank you again to all of you. This has been so much fun. Thank you to everyone who's commented, sharing your tasting notes. So much fun. Yeah, kind of sad to leave, but I'm so glad.
I think we should leave on Colin Bathgate's comments. That it's great to see women in prominent positions in the whiskey industry. You've all been very informative, enthusiastic, and knowledgeable. Thank you all very much. That's a great
Round of applause for everyone, and we'll be back soon. Thank you again, folks.